coming back to a point you touched on earlier, the lettings market. Where do you see that going in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think, rental prices have gone up this year, and I think next year we will.
And why is that? What's your view on that?
Well, I think there's always the supply and demand. London particularly, there's certainly not enough housing stock, and I think we are going to miss or the government are going to miss their new homes target by about 40%. So it's quite a significant miss.
Yeah.
So, there is a supply and demand issue in London, and that is going to continually push up rental prices. There's been quite a lot of pressure over the, last number of years on landlords. And I think, statistically, it's about 15% of landlords selling out of the marketplace. So that, again, is reducing supply. And that is going to continue to drive property prices or rental prices. So, it is a competitive, marketplace for a tenant. And actually, I really feel for people. It is really hard finding a home as a current tenant. But unfortunately, I don't think that's going to change, and I don't think it's going to get any easier. And I think, there's also been lots of struggles around the house building marketplace. And, if you look at a lot of the statistics, it's taking so long now to get a property from planning through to completion and onto the marketplace. There is going to be a backlog of available property coming through. And I think, again, if I'm right, I sort of read something and it was saying in 2027-28, there's due to be about 3,000 homes completed, new build homes completed in London, which is, an insignificant amount. And that is all down to this backlog that we've seen, all of the challenges that developers have had through planning, delays, the cost of building. And that's going to be a real struggle. So if we're thinking 2 or 3 years' time, there is going to be a massive shortfall of properties coming to the marketplace. That is clearly going to impact rental prices, I have no doubt. And I think in time we'll start to push sales market and prices back up as well. But it is a supply and demand issue, and I don't think that's getting any easier, unfortunately.
Okay. And the points of the rental reform, what impacts have they had so far? Have you seen anything?
Well, I think it's always been sort of floating around most of this year, and now we've got some sort of clarity. So I think lots of people have sort of paid half attention to it, but now actually it's probably worth really looking into it and making sure that, as an agent, as a landlord, as an investor, you really understand the new legislation coming in and how that's going to affect you. I think there are some challenges around it, but I think for a lot of tenants, I actually think tenancies will stay in their properties for a little bit longer. I know a lot of people are sort of fearful that tenants can leave a property now much sooner. There's no fixed term contracts, but like with a lot of things, moving is stressful and can often be a bit costly. So if things just roll on, if your tenancy just rolls on, I actually think people will probably stay for longer. And a lot of our marketplace, we rent very, very lovely properties. We have fantastic landlords, which, really look after their properties and offer great rental homes. So I think as a tenant, if you're living, in a really nice home, which is well maintained, if you've got a lovely landlord, and lots of people have a relationship with them, or whether you've got an agent like Douglas and Gordon who's looking after the management of that property and doing a good job, it's likely you're going to keep that. You're going to keep remain in that property. You don't need to get to the end of your 12, 18-month contract and think, right, there's a natural break here. I've now got to decide, do I want to stay and maybe renew, or do I want to go and look and move? So I actually think tenancies will go on for longer. And I also think it will force landlords to really invest in their tenants and really invest in their properties and really look after the tenant. But it is happening, and it's now in sort of first quarter of next year, everyone's going to have their ducks in it, or have to have their ducks in a row, so they're ready for it. Okay.
Are you seeing many landlords come back to the market, or is it landlords moving away? What's the sort of dynamic are you seeing?
I think lots of landlords are moving away from owning property and as an investment form. And I think certainly probably in sort of London, where it's been a little bit more challenged, up in sort of the northwest, you've got the benefit of the yields, and the sort of entry price of property is much, much lower. But I do think, the marketplace is going to get better, or is currently getting better for buy-to-let landlords. If you think about rental prices are going up, mortgage rates are coming down, yields are growing as a result of that, that the whole investment side of property ownership is now going to improve, and it is improving. I think people probably have, in the London market, have always relied on capital growth, and of course that has been a bit stagnant. And I think we will see some mild or modest capital growth over the next year. But I do think the yields are going to improve. If your mortgage rates come down and your rents go up, I think that becomes more of an interest. Property comes back on the radar, and we've seen it even in the last month or so. We've actually registered and had a number of more buy-to-let searches and buy-to-let buyers in our pipeline. I don't think they're coming back in hordes, but we are starting to deal with that buy-to-let investor again.
Is the smart money coming back then? Is that what we're seeing?
I mean, for me, obviously, I'm very biased, and I sort of absolutely believe in the property market, but I do think so. I think if you were looking to buy a buy-to-let investment today, and you have a view that supply and demand challenges around London are not going to change, and I don't think there's any way that's going to change. There's always going to be, a real separation between the amount of people looking to live in London, the amount of homes available. If you have a long-term view that, it's a very, very safe haven, it's a safe place to put your money. Currently prices, are competitive. You can get a good deal. As I've said, mortgage rates coming down, rents going up. I think now is as good a time as ever to actually come back and buy into the London property market.
Okay, that's good to hear. I think what we've seen, from the mortgage perspective, it's been the rental calculations that have been a bit of a barrier, because the amount of deposit you have to put down versus even 20 years ago, where we could actually get people 89% loan to value on a buy-to-let, whereas in London it's sort of gone from 65% or whatever. But there are a lot of lenders now coming to the table offering top slice, and so there's a few different ways of looking to actually navigate the rules that are in place, which is good, because someone has got surplus income. Why shouldn't they be able to use it towards the buy-to-let mortgage? And if anything, it just seems to be rather than being a short-term investment, which it probably was for a lot of people in the noughties especially. It's just a longer-term game now, isn't it? It's where to put the money safely. So how do you think London does differ from the rest of the country on the rental perspective?
Well, I guess, rental's very, very high, and it's super, super competitive, as we know. I don't sort of really operate outside of that London market, but I guess, some of the advantages and some of the buy-to-let investors who may have moved out of the capital and gone to, north of England, the entry level is a lot lower, and the yields as a result are a lot higher. So if you're a yield-focused buy-to-let investor, London probably has been less attractive for you over the last period of time, and actually, to be honest, probably will remain less attractive compared to other parts of the country. I have a view that, again, London's a very, very safe place to put your money. Property is a very safe place to put your money in the long term, and I don't think that's going to change. And I do think, over the next period of time, we will see capital growth come back into the London market, although be it, lots of the reports coming out, for 2026 are sort of showing quite modest 2, 3, 4% growth. I think actually if you look at that over the long term, as we've said, and buy-to-let or property investment is a long-term investment.
Yeah.